Hi, everyone. It's Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby here with my wonderful colleague, David Buchanan, ready to discuss the Tony Awards because we are 1 week away, David, from the Tonys, which is a little crazy when we talk about musicals because Best Musical, we still don't have any idea what's happening with this. We kind of started the season earlier with that as our big question, and I thought we would have an answer by now, but I think this is one of the most wide open Best Musical races I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Don't you agree?
I have no clarity on what to predict. We'll talk about later what we're thinking as we go through the categories, but I do think there's two or three or maybe four
Maybe even four,
that could
honestly.
actually win Best Musical this year, which is very exciting.
Yeah. I think so. Since that's such a big sticking point, and that's really what everyone is trying to do, let's look at what's winning each of these other categories. And we'll circle back to Best Musical at the end. So maybe we'll have if we go through our rankings, maybe we'll have a better idea. So let's start with Best Revival of a Musical. I have Merrily We Roll Along winning this. It seems like a steamroller. Is there anything that can take down Merrily in this category, David?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think Cabaret might get some votes. I know that production does have some passionate fans. I don't want to discount it. And it did great with nominations, but I don't think anything this season in musicals or plays has been as praised and cherished as this revival of Merrily. So I'm very confident in it.
Yeah, I don't think this one is one we need to spend a ton of time overthinking because I don't think anything it feels as zeitgeisty as Merrily. It just has dominated so much of the conversation. So other categories for it could be more up in the air, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be marching to the podium on this one. One of those categories, I think, is Best Director of a Musical, which a lot of us have Maria Friedman out front. I think you still are predicting her too for finally kind of cracking the code of this Sondheim show. But is there? I keep wondering, like maybe I'm overthinking, but I just remember Come From Away, Christopher Ashley coming out of nowhere as the one win for that show. And I think Best Director could be a spot where some of these other ones, like, could be the one win for a show, like Michael Greif in Hell's Kitchen, um, Water for Elephants, The Outsiders. Those are very director-heavy shows. Maybe this is a place where they have their one big win. What do you think about that?
I am predicting Maria. I feel like the trajectory of Merrily this year is going to be very similar to Company a couple years ago, where it
Hmm.
wins the top categories, a couple acting trophies. And I do think there's so many great directors in the lineup this year. And that might be part of the problem is if it's not Maria, who is the other choice? That's not vote
Right.
splitting. That's not actually what vote splitting is like when there's so many choices. But like I personally, if I wasn't voting for Maria, I'd probably vote for Danya Tamor for The Outsiders. I thought what she did with that production was stellar. Michael Greif had a sensational year. Jessica Stone, like there's so many different strong contenders that I don't feel like there's a really strong secondary choice.
Mhm.
Who do you think, if it's not Maria, who I feel very confident in, who would you vote for, and or who do you think would be that number?
Oh, I guess as a voter, I might vote. I would probably vote for Maria.
Yeah.
But I also would be very tempted by Danya Taymor just because I again feel like The Outsiders is a huge directorial achievement. And there's something about Jessica Stone. She's shown up in a lot of the New York Theater Awards this season when others haven't. And Water for Elephants is, we'll get to Best Musical, but I feel like Water for Elephants is kind of on the bottom of my list for that in terms of its competitiveness to win. And I feel like a lot of people like that show, but there's not a ton of places where it can actually win an award. But it is a super impressive directing job of combining circus, musical theater, dance, puppetry all into one. And I do think people walk away very impressed with her. And not only that, she's coming off of directing Best Musical winner Kimberly Akimbo, which is a completely different job and showcases completely different skill sets than Water for Elephants. So in 2 years, she's kind of shown like, here's the full breadth of like everything I can do as a creative, which is a pretty impressive thing to have on your resume, like going into a awards vote. So I just like have it in my mind of like trying to pick out who's going to be a crazy Christopher Ashley type upset. I'm not predicting the upset right now, but I just want everyone to know, like, if there is an upset, you heard it here first. And I just like have some sort of inkling that there's like the potential for something to go crazy wrong. But I do think Maria is very far out front. I think we can agree.
Yeah.
Um, moving on to another, probably Merrily. I feel like Merrily's going to win the lion's share of these awards for musicals, because another one that I think they have pretty set is lead actor in a musical, Jonathan Groff. Are you predicting anyone other than Jonathan?
No, I think in a different year, there are many strong contenders here who could have won the Tony. I think what he does with Frank is so powerful. He's really the center of that show. And he's not, I wouldn't say he's overdue for recognition, but he's been in the industry for a very long time. He's got a couple of nominations under his belt. The industry loves him. It just feels like everything is culminating for him in this moment. I have like in second and third, like Brian Darcy James. I thought he was extraordinary in Wine and Roses, and Brody Grant was excellent in the Outsider category. There's not a bad performer in this category, but I do just think Jonathan is pretty undeniable. How about you?
Yeah, I think the race became pretty squarely Jonathan versus Brian Darcy James. They're the two theater Broadway mainstays who have somehow yet to win a Tony, despite really acclaimed roles under their belts. And Brian is hurt a little bit because Days of Wine and Roses is closed, and Jonathan has really done a crazy press tour and gotten so much publicity. He had a special honor at the Drama League. He's just been all over the place, and it's tipping things over to his side. So I think Jonathan wins handily. The other lead acting category, lead actress in a musical, is an entirely other different story though, because Merrily doesn't have a lead actress. Lindsay's down and featured. So what's going on in this category? I mean, we have Kelly O'Hara. I think we're both predicting Kelly O'Hara for Days of Wine and Roses to win, but I just talked about Brian being hurt by it being closed. And so she's not in a Best Musical nominee, and she is in a closed musical, which is a double whammy of hurt there for your award statistics. But there's just something about that performance that people have remembered and has stuck with folks, and she keeps getting nominations and getting a bunch of votes at these other awards, and she really still, I think, has people talking about that performance.
I think and like you said, it would be it may be surprising statistically to see Kelly win. So I think we know full well the potential folly of predicting Kelly to win. However, I do think the fact that it's closed, the show is closed, is maybe offset by the fact that out of all the shows that are still running, there's some great performances here that they could award. But I don't know if any of them feel undeniable in the sense that, like,
Right.
okay, if these voters actually saw all these performers, which the majority of them have, I know there's a change in the rules for the voting, so blah blah blah. There's a caveat, but for the ones who actually saw all these performers, I do think a lot of them are still going to be marking Kelly O'Hara because of just how otherworldly that performance was. And it's not to take away anything from the other nominees, but I don't think there's one of the others that is still running that's like, okay, that is my clear choice. But I don't know. How do you feel about, like, how confident are you considering, Marianne Plunkett is sensational in The Notebook, an absolutely beautiful performance. Tony Shalhoub won for a role that doesn't have very many songs or solos. It wouldn't be, that unprecedented, but like, how do you feel about the rest of the race?
Yeah, I mean, Marianne would be an amazing winner. I love her performance so much. Another person who's not in a Best Musical nominee because The Notebook didn't get in to that top category. I think Kelly's main competition is Malia Joy Moon, who this is her Broadway debut in Hell's Kitchen. Sometimes they really love using this category to sort of crown a newcomer and say you're Broadway's next big thing, which could happen there. But I just feel like there are other roles in this category, like Kelly's role, like Marianne's role, or even Gail Ranking's role, and like that require a lot more. Like there's just so much more going on with them, and they have to cover like years of a woman's life. I mean, Eden Espinosa is playing Limpika. She probably won't win because that's long closed now, but playing her over the course of like decades and decades of her life. And I think that there's something impressive about the scope of these other roles. And I guess Malia feels like the exciting new choice. However, I guess I've talked to a lot of people who still have Kelly on their lips. She feels like Broadway royalty and someone who we should just have 2 Tony Awards. I don't think people will have a qualm about giving her 2 Tony Awards. And like in all honesty, I had trouble connecting with Days of Wine and Roses. It's not my favorite show. And even though it's not my favorite show, I walked away and I was like, Best Actress. I would easily vote for you for Best Actress because it was some of the most incredible acting I've ever seen on a stage. And I've seen a lot of freaking shows at this point. And she just absolutely blew me away with what she did. I think it's so complex and will like in retrospectives years from now, when people look back on Kelly O'Hara's career, I think they will look at this and say like, this is probably the pinnacle of her acting. No pressure, Kelly. You'll still do great work elsewhere, but
Yeah, no,
but I just think it just feels kind of like an undeniable performance. It's like, can it overcome not being open anymore and not being one of those top 5 shows?
yeah, I want to just add to what you're saying. Number one, I have seen people say it's too soon to give her a second Tony, which, I find a bit puzzling considering it doesn't happen all the time, but they've given performers 2 Tonys back to back consecutive wins. We've seen that just in my memory. We've seen it at least twice since I've been, covering Tony Awards, Laurie Metcalf and Judith Light in other categories. So that's not unparalleled that, you get 2 Tonys in the span of a couple of years. And also, to your point, the book scenes of Wine and Roses, not that there's a lot of them, but there are some book scenes in that show that are just as strong. You feel like you're watching a really good play. There's that
Oh
motel
yeah.
that you and I have talked about offline where, that performance you could put in the best actress in a play category, and nominate her, for that kind of acting. So I think the across the board work in
Yeah.
song and in, just straight drama performance is so strong.
The
I
motel scene, I thought it was a different woman on stage. I thought they like put a double or that we were with some other character because she didn't even look like herself in that scene. It was crazy. It's a crazy good performance. It's amazing. And that's why I just like can't quite give her up despite stats saying
yeah,
she's not going to win.
yeah.
Um, well, you brought up this thing of winning close together makes me think of featured actress in a musical. So let's jump there because I feel like the main reason that people are hesitant about Lindsay Mendez in Merrily We Roll Along, who is leading our odds right now, but the main reason people are hesitant about her out of the Merrily trio is because she won fairly recently for Carousel. And yes, we've seen, back-to-back winners, but those are for people like Laurie Metcalf and Judith Light who kind of occupy their own category. Like a lot of people are just like, Laurie Metcalf is my favorite actor in the universe. So sure, back-to-back wins. And other times it makes people, I think the hesitancy around this win being close to her win for Carousel is that there's a huge group of contenders here. There's 7 nominees in this category, and they include people who have never won before, despite really long, beloved careers in this industry. Namely, the 2 women from Hell's Kitchen, I think, who have emerged as the closest competitors, which are Keisha Lewis, and I think she said in her interview with me that it's the day before the Tonys will be 40 years to the day from her first time on Broadway in Dreamgirls. And then Shoshana Bean, who has a storied career, has never won. She just has the one nomination for Mr. Saturday Night. And so it's like, as a voter, this is where like the personal things start to happen that are not to do with performance at all. Like, oh, well, I do really love Lindsay's performance, but I also love these women who've never been recognized before, who've never won before, and maybe that comes into play. Do you think that's coming into play here?
Maybe. I do think there's just also a heck of a lot of passion for Keisha Lewis's performance, and her vocal performance in particular. What I would say about Lindsay, and this is why I'm sticking with her, even though I do think there's a lot of maybe passion behind Keisha as well. If you're a voter and you're checking off Merrily for Best Revival, probably director, you're probably voting for Jonathan Groff, you're probably voting for Daniel Radcliffe, which we'll talk about soon. Are you really not going to vote for Lindsay as a part of that trio? The show does not work without her. I mean, the show does not work
Yeah.
with any of those three in those roles. They are so perfectly, the alchemy of those performances is so perfect. I don't know, like me personally, despite, I love Nikki M. James and Suffs. I was so thrilled that she got nominated. And, maybe fans of Suffs might vote for her. She's really terrific in that show. I adore BB Newirth. People loved her in Cabaret. Are you really going to not vote for the third member of the Merrily trio? That's what's like eating at my mind about like, do I predict somebody else? But no, because I can't fathom not voting for Lindsay and voting for the other two. I just can't.
Yeah. And they very smartly pushed all of them from the very beginning since Merrily debuted as a trio in press appearances, and they've sold that as a package. It's the same thing the press team did for the Humans, with that pair who won. It was like, well, if you're voting for Reed Birney, you're also voting for Jane Howdyshell. Like they come together as a pair, and I think that same thing has happened with Merrily. But who knows? I think it just depends on how much people want to award someone who's never won. And then there's Leslie Kritzer, who has made her entire Tony season one big long sketch comedy routine for a farewell tour from the Lady of the Lake. So anything could happen. But I do think Lindsay is probably the one. And just so we can cover it, Daniel Radcliffe, featured actor in a musical, gonna happen, right?
Yeah, gonna happen.
Yeah. I mean, I keep trying to like order everyone. I think I have Brandon right below him, Brandon Victor Dixon from Hell's Kitchen, but everything seems like there's such a far gap between anyone in second place and Daniel's performance. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think Steven Skybell Cabaret got great notices. People really like that performance. I love the two guys from The Outsiders. I don't know. The problem there is I don't know who I would vote for of the two. I thought that whole ensemble was terrific. And I just do think Merrily is going to be so popular. I can't see Daniel not winning.
Yeah. Done deal. He's finally gonna. It's an IOU for not nominating him for so many other performances where he should have been nominated, I think. Um, let's move on to category that is very important for best musical, which is best book of a musical. I have Suffs out front for this one. We have a lineup here, excuse me, that has Suffs, Hell's Kitchen, The Outsiders, The Notebook, and Hell's Kitchen. What do you have out front?
I have Suffs as well. I am really debating, how many is Suffs going to win book and score as a pair, like a lot of shows do. Not every year. Recently we had a split between A Strange Loop and Six, I believe. So yeah, I have Suffs out front right now. I think my number 2 in the category is The Outsiders. Adam Rapp is a really well-respected playwright. Justin Levine has his hands in a lot of different components of the show. He's an award-winning orchestrator, Tony Award-winning orchestrator. And it's a really strong, for me, adaptation of a beloved novel. I think they did a great job bringing it to the stage. I do have Suffs out front. I do think, and we'll talk about this when we get to the end and what we think about best musical. I do think a lot of the components of Suffs are the best of their, I think it's the most well-crafted, book and potentially score of the season. So I feel pretty good about Suffs in book. If you I think you're predicting that too. So what would be your number two? What shows are concerning you about, maybe Suffs
This,
album?
yeah, this is like another category like director where I have a very strong front runner because again, I think Shayna has a really well constructed book for this musical. It's just really the writing is just excellent. So I do have that as the very strong front runner, but book similar to director is one where I'm like cautious of the left field dark horse contender emerging as a shocking victory here as again a space where maybe one of these big musicals it's the only thing they get. So I think The Outsiders has a strong chance to be that dark horse contender, as well as Water for Elephants with Rick Ellis, who has never won. I think he's someone who a lot of people assume has a Tony already, but like he didn't win. He never won a Tony. I think a lot of people assume Jersey Boys gave it to him, but that didn't happen. Um, and I just feel like those are two shows that Water for Elephants and The Outsiders that have a really healthy number of nominations, but are at risk of going home either empty-handed or just winning one thing. And this could be a spot where they recognize the writing in one of those shows and how I think they're unique in the way that they are put together and the way that they present those stories. Um, I'm still going with Shayna, but if you're looking for an upset, I think this is a category where sometimes a big upset happens.
Yeah.
Speaking of upsets, best original score. I also have Suffs. But then we have The Outsiders again, Stereophonic, Here Lies Love, Days of Wine and Roses. Is there a world in which Stereophonic, the one play in the category, overcomes all these musicals to win best original score?
Yes, possible. I've been toggling between the two in the prediction center for the past week or so, like moving Stereophonic into number one and then back to Suffs. I think Stereophonic has the most kind of popular, buzzy music of the season. Like when that cast album came out, it was so hyped. People love the songs. People love the fact that they're hearing songs that were not in the show or we heard snippets of, and now they get to experience them in full.
Mhm.
And it's great songwriting, and I love the Stereophonic score, and I love the show. We'll talk about that in the next video. However, is it are they voting on what they like the best, or are they voting on the best kind of traditional musical score? Because that's the difference. Is it not to discredit the way that the songs from Stereophonic move the plot forward and the character dynamics. They're not just rock songs that they threw into the show. They're very integral to the story and to the character dynamics. So not to discredit that, but Suffs is a much more conventional theater score. And it's also a great theater score. I mean, I think the Suffs score is excellent. So that's the debate. I am not sold. I'm really on the fence between. I think if it was a popularity contest, which oftentimes it is, I think Stereophonic could very easily win this. What do you think about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Stereophonic has, I think they just announced, I forget what I think on Amazon Music and one other platform, they have the most popular Broadway album of any new show this season. So in some metrics, the music has already beaten these musicals, which is crazy. And I admit when that album came out, I have listened to Masquerade an unhealthy amount of times. I like on the train to work, I just like play it over and over because I can't stop. I love that we have the three versions of Bright on there. And so some of them, yeah, aren't even featured in full on the Broadway stage. They're just for the album, those full versions, but it's just they were really smart in getting that all together and releasing it. They've had they did a whole concert just a few nights ago actually of it with Amber Gray and a few other people singing those songs. And I also feel like they might get some sympathy in this category because they were just denied a performance slot uh, at the Tony Awards telecast. Who would have thought CBS doesn't want someone's money because all these shows have to pay to perform. They're like six figures, but they were denied a slot despite having this music and despite being a great way to finally represent one of the play nominees who always kind of get the shaft. at this ceremony. And so some people might just be like, you know what, I will give you the Tony Award for best score. I don't know. It's really, I feel like it's not moving, like as you said, moving the story forward in the same type of way as something like Suffs does, which is a traditional musical theater score, but it's really exciting music. And I think, God, it has some of just the, like, those moments that you talk about of like, oh, that's your Tony moment that you play when the nominee clip package is rolled. Like Masquerade, everyone is listening to this song on repeat. Like no one can get enough of this stuff. And it's like maybe all it takes is that one killer song to take it.
Yeah, and also how brilliant is like Bright at giving us insight into Sarah Pigeon's character Diana. I mean, what she
oh, I
is
know.
through songwriting, it's an unconventional theater score, but it is a theatrical score. So I don't know, you're almost persuading me to switch back to stereophonic. I wonder too, like the fact that they released that cast recording a couple weeks ago digitally while Suffs just came out the other day. These are minor things in a kind of campaign cycle, but the fact that people have been able to listen to stereophonic on repeat. I mean, I did listen to Suffs the other day, and then of course, I wake up the next day and some of those songs are in my head, and it's like they're both great scores. It's. I think this will be a toss up until I'll be flip flopping until Sunday night.
Yeah. I'm keeping Suffs for now just because like the concept of an original musical with new music and honoring our Broadway composers has been like the main mission of the Tonys for the past several, like that's what the voters have really pushed forward. That's why jukebox musicals haven't won except for Moulin Rouge and COVID year. Um, that has been like the most important goal, I feel like, for so many voters. So I'm still going with Suffs, but Stereophonic could be the one play to do it because people love it so well. You mentioned Bright, the song Bright before, which I think really displays the power of orchestrations. And I don't have stereophonic winning score, but I do have it winning orchestrations, and it would be the first play to win, and it's the first play ever nominated for this category. But I feel like when I watched that scene, it was just like, wow, here's the power of orchestrations and how it can completely change the tone, the emotion, the storytelling of a moment. So do you agree? It's Stereophonic, Illinois, Merrily We Roll Along, The Outsiders, Hell's Kitchen for that category.
I think Stereophonic is a really strong contender. I know a lot of people are predicting Illinois, and I'm right now stuck between Stereophonic and, believe it or not, and maybe you'll help dissuade me, but I'm also thinking about Merrily, and here's
No,
why.
that's very possible.
Yeah, and here's why I'm kind of going with it right now. Number one, as we've talked about, it's going to have a lot of passion in these votes. I think it's going to win, 5+ awards. Not a small feat. Jonathan Tunick, Sondheim's long collaborator of choice, as he's billed in the playbill. And also the fact that, I mean, take away like the personal dynamics of the fact that like Tunick hasn't won a Tony since '97 or something. He's only won all of his nominations. When you sit down at the Hudson to see Merrily and you hear that overture, one of the best overtures ever written for the Broadway stage, and it's reorchestrated. He did new orchestrations. I mean, I just don't know if there's any moment kind of more joy than listening to that overture played on a Broadway stage in an impeccable production. So I'm very tempted to predict Jonathan Tunick, and I would love to see him win.
God, that's such a good point. Not enough shows have overtures anymore these days, but it really is. I'm just the tricky thing about predicting this category is that it's decided on orchestrations and the two sound design categories are decided on by a smaller pool of people who have said, we do this, we're the experts in this field, so we'll decide this because so many voters said I don't have enough, wherewithal to judge this properly. And there is, if you go back through the winners, there is like no pattern. Like we always look for patterns in these categories of how are we going to predict it. Sometimes it's the best musical winner. Sometimes it's the best revival winner. But you can also have Girl from the North Country come out and that's the only thing it wins. Or like Fosse won it, despite not getting in all these other places. I'm trying to think of the other like main exception there to it, but there's tons of exceptions all over the place. I think Moving Out won despite not winning Best Musical. Um, so it's just really hard to figure out what this group of people is going to do. Um, and I think it's kind of a three-horse race at this point. I would say Illinois is still very much in it. The music is really at the forefront. You're watching those musicians play the whole time, and it sounds totally unique, I think, from anything else in the category. Um, but God, that Merrily Overture is like making me think maybe they'll finally do it and give Jonathan another one, because it's really weird that he's one of the best in the business and his only win is for Titanic is kind of crazy. Um, I wonder how many of them are like tapped into the fact that he has really reorchestrated this and done his own thing with it, or not. But if they're experts, then they should. But it's really hard to know. But you actually might convince me to switch over to Jonathan Tunick for orchestrations. We'll see. But I feel like the moment in Stereophonic is just like this is what it's all about, which is why I can't really let it go.
Yeah.
Let's move on to choreography. I have had Justin Peck out front ever since Illinois announced its transfer for best choreography, but we also have Hell's Kitchen, The Outsiders, Here Lies Love, Water for Elephants. Do you think anything can take down Justin Peck from winning a second Tony Award?
I think some shows can. I don't know how likely it is. I have Illinois out front too. I feel very confident in that, especially because, and this might be counterintuitive, but because he didn't get nominated for Best Director, I feel like all the support for him is going to be behind the choreography. And we were talking about, can it win Best Musical? Well, I don't know how we feel about its chances relative to like pre-nominations, how strong we were feeling about it. But if it doesn't win Best Musical, this might be, to your point, one of the surefire categories where it is going to win an award. And I do think people walk away remembering, the choreography of this show. So I feel pretty good about it. I would be hesitant about Hell's Kitchen. She does incredible work all the time, Camille Brown, and this is no exception. And then the Rumble of the Outsiders, I mean, it's one of my favorite things that I've seen on stage in a very long time. So, if that was, the criteria, I would maybe vote for the Outsiders too. I wouldn't rule that out, but I feel pretty strongly about Illinois. How about you?
Yeah, those are the two I think that are the challengers. The Rumble, I think, is one of the most talked about moments of the entire season. So awarding it choreography is definitely like a way to highlight that moment. And I think movement is a huge piece of the storytelling in The Outsiders. It would make a great winner here. I do feel like Camille A. Brown, there's something about her choreography here that just like people are talking about a lot. It's all really high energy, um, really unique storytelling, even though it fits within the mold of musical theater storytelling through dance. It is incorporating a lot more of hip hop, of like a lot of urban dances that make it feel very singular in a way. And if Justin Peck wasn't there, I think Camille would very easily win this category, which is why I'm like, there's still, I still feel like there's a chance because Illinois is not, it's a dance piece that's not like typical Broadway dance. But I think just because of the nature of it, that all the story is told through this medium, he will take it. But I'm not ruling out Camille Brown to have an upset. Another one, if you want to predict an upset, it would probably be Camille Brown here for Hell's Kitchen. Let's talk about a few places that we haven't talked about in really any of our videos much yet. Scenic design of a musical. If we move on to the design categories, we have a seven show lineup here. I have Here Lies Love out front, and I think its main competition is probably the other complete overhaul redesign of a theater with Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club. But there's a few other places I think that shows that could move past those. What do you think?
Yeah, I have Here Lies Love out front as well. I have Cabaret right behind it, as you were saying. I don't know. I mean, I do think there's some other contenders that could be potentially strong in here. Back to the Future, the design of that show across the board is so standout that, is it likely to win? I don't know about likely, but it's possible. Those are my top three in the category. Um, I know you loved Here Lies Love. So what about the scenic design? Like, how confident are you in that versus, the kind of immersive, the redesign of Cabaret? Like you said, two humongous, redesigns competing against each other.
Yeah, so it's hard to like compare them. They both have imagined the space considerably. In Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club, you don't even enter through the doors of the August Wilson. You go to the side. It's like you're entering through some exclusive underground. You only get in if you know the password at the door kind of club. You go through the alley, and the lobby spaces of the theater become these lively bars and performance spaces that have some variety of performers in them. And when you walk into the theater, they've staged it in the round, a tiny little stage in the center, and built like a second orchestra and mezzanine across from the real orchestra and mezzanine. So it's very cool. The difference with Here Lies Love to me is that they really put you inside the set in a way that I have never experienced ever on a Broadway show. When you go into the Broadway theater for that one, like I didn't even know where I was, like where I was going, because there's a whole uh unit of steel and lights and curtains and all this stuff that makes a nightclub within the theater. And so there's people dancing on the dance floor of the nightclub. There are platforms of the stage that move around that create all these different configurations. So the performers are happening all around you. It's up in the mezzanine too. There's catwalks up in the mezzanine. So sometimes the performance is happening up there, but they're playing to someone down on the dance floor. It's really crazy, and really captures an immersive storytelling. There's a lot of shows that use that term but aren't like really immersive, and this was pretty immersive storytelling. Um, its hurdle again is that it's closed. So how, that definitely is something that always will hurt your chances with the musical races. But I feel like this is the one place I feel comfortable giving a closed, like Here Lies Love. I think if it was still open, it would win a lot more of the design categories, but this is the one I feel really should happen because it was so singular and so unique. I just don't really think there's anything else that moved me that way with the space of the show.
Yeah, that's very compelling. I do think if it's not that, it's probably Cabaret, just for how, the kind of recency bias, the fact that voters are probably seeing it in the past few weeks, and having that, as you said, the unique experience of how you enter the hour-long pre-show where you're exploring the space. That's a concern of mine making these predictions, unlike others, talking about closed shows, is like, well, the fact that they probably just had this experience, but I'm sticking with Here Lies Love for now.
Yeah, I think if there's a possibility of an upset, like maybe Back to the Future because of the effects with the DeLorean are really cool. Hell's Kitchen has a really visually arresting set, but I feel like people might more consider it lighting design, and it's all about like the colors of everything. So I do think it's probably Here Lies Love versus Cabaret. Let's move on to another thing I have Cabaret out front for, costume design of a musical, which right now I am going with Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club, but I am not convinced. This feels like very fluid to me. The other nominees are Hell's Kitchen, Suffs, The Great Gatsby, and Water for Elephants. What are you predicting here?
I have Cabaret too. I think it has maybe the most memorable singular costumes. In particular, Eddie Redmayne's, MC costumes, very memorable, potentially polarizing too, but definitely stand out in your memory. I think a lot of the other ones have strong potential too. Suffs has great kind of historically appropriate yet kind of modern sensibility costumes. I thought that work was terrific. Great Gatsby is a very kind of lavish show. Those are my 2 and 3. Um, I don't know. What are your, if it's not cabaret, what do you think is going to upset?
It's hard because I don't think any of them, none of the five are like slam dunk, this has it to me. I've Great Gatsby has amazing costumes in it, but this is its only nomination. So I feel like I can't choose it on its only nomination, especially when it couldn't get into a 7 show strong scenic design lineup, which was kind of crazy to me. But it just kind of telegraphs that maybe people aren't so hot on this show if this is the only place it could get in. I've been toying with putting Hell's Kitchen first, actually. I think that they're really campaigning like hell for the show, and people feel great about it. I think they're like really capitalizing on the vibrancy and the joy in the show, which is very smart. And the costumes are not the typical thing that would win this category. Usually, you have to have something lavish, period, a lot of like construction and creation in it. This is taking place in the 90s, so it's a period, but it's a pretty recent period. But it's just it adds to that vibrancy. Everything really pops off the stage. There's a whole lot of color being used. So I feel like it could stand out to people in that way. And if Hell's Kitchen is someone's choice for best musical, uh, I feel like the costumes are something they're going to check off. But I have Cabaret for the moment just because that is a period accurate costume design, and they give themselves leeway, even if some of it is polarizing. They've given themselves leeway to create really unique things, like when Eddie Redmayne comes out, and I don't even know what it was. I don't know if it was like made out of bullets or something, like his black getup with the riveted structures on it. There's a lot of really unique stuff in it that could stand out. So I'm going with Cabaret, but I think Here Lies Love could take this. I think Suffs could take this. It's kind of up in the air to me. So I'm not really sure how to rank them at
Yeah.
all. How about lighting design of a musical? We have Cabaret again, Hell's Kitchen, Illinois, The Outsiders, and Water for Elephants. What are you going with?
I right now have The Outsiders. I'm not terribly confident in it. I know there's other shows leading our odds. Cabaret. I actually honestly think any of these have a possibility. I have Outsiders. I have Cabaret kind of in a second. I'm even toying with, to your point about costumes, Hell's Kitchen. Very, as you said, vibrant kind of lighting in that show. I don't know. I right now this is why I have The Outsiders. I feel like the combination of the lighting design, I think the production designer is also nominated alongside them. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Just really brilliant use of lighting throughout, and the end of the show in particular, the kind of colors that they use at the end. It's just one of those stage moments that has stuck with me throughout the season. So that to me is one of the reasons I'm going with The Outsiders, because it has really remained in my mind. What do you have out front, and what are your kind of spoilers?
I've been toying between The Outsiders and Illinois for this one. Lighting is tricky because I think there's a lot of nuance in lighting design that frankly gets forgot about when it's time to vote on an award, because you're removed from the production and maybe some of the subtler things get lost, and it's kind of about, again, what like singular moment sticks out in your memory. And I think The Outsiders has a lot of really beautiful tableaus that are like the Stay Golden moment, and there's like this beautiful golden hued light around them, and when they're singing Great Expectations and they're sort of like flash lit from the side, there's just so many moments that I can still picture. And I saw that back in when was that, my marathon in April, I think, or late March. So it's a definite contender there. I think the lighting is really strong, strong in subtle ways that I'm sure the lighting designers all want us to know, but strong in these really memorable singular moments. And the Illinois too, I think, is it's able to cycle through a lot of different styles, especially at the start of the show when we're in the campfire storytelling and we're going through the zombie story, the love story, the Superman story, they all have very distinct styles to them. Um, and there's cool effects like towards the end, there's this giant tree branch that's overarching the stage, and the lights sort of like shimmer up through it, and everyone goes, "Oh, the lighting!" And so those are the two that I'm toying with, and I don't really know which one to put out front. I think I've gone with The Outsiders just because I sense a lot of like love for that show in talking to people, and yet not a lot of wins for that show. And this feels like one of the few places where they could check off The Outsiders as a win. And so that's kind of my main basis. But I feel pretty evenly split between The Outsiders and Illinoise here. I guess Cabaret for me, I have that lower down. It could be a contender just because of the unique space and having to light for the theater in the round setup and some other little spaces peppered around, but I think it's probably Outsiders or Illinoise for me. That our last design category is sound design of a musical, where we have Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club, Here Lies Love, Hell's Kitchen, Merrily We Roll Along, and The Outsiders. What are you going with?
Hell's Kitchen, and I feel pretty good about this one relative to the other design categories. How about you?
Yeah, I think this is a space where if Here Lies Love was still open, I do think Here Lies Love would just win in a landslide, and it would get my vote for sure. Like, not to like, not ragging on other nominees. I just feel like it was so, Here Lies Love was so unique in this respect, and the sheer workload was insane. But I've dropped it down to second place because in my years of doing this and talking to people, I feel like sound design more than any other of the design categories, and maybe any other category in general, is the one that is most affected by memory. And I think because sound is not a physical, tangible thing that you can see and touch on stage, uh, the things that might have blown you away when you first take in a show with sound really do fade with time quite a lot. And so I think this is a space where being closed will really hurt Here Lies Love. And in lieu of that, I have Hell's Kitchen winning because it is the most sound design. It is the loudest sound design. It feels like you're at a really great concert. There's one moment where the final note of a song like ripples through the whole audience, and you literally feel yourself being like shot back in your seat. So it's really cool, and I think that will win. Again, though, this is a category which is decided by a peer group. So there is a chance, I think, of an upset. Cabaret again has a really unique, non-traditional space, which in the past has helped certain things win this category, win a sound design category. And Merrily We Roll Along is one that people just really love this production. We shouldn't underestimate how much people love this production, and they could definitely check it off here as it sweeps so many of the other categories. But I'm going with Here Lies Love. It's a very popular, I'm not Here Lies Love, sorry. That's in second place. Sorry, Here Lies Love. Going with Hell's Kitchen, the other H musical, uh, because I think it's the most sound design, basically.
Yeah.
Well, David, we've gone through all these categories, and sitting before us is this best musical lineup. So if we think about everything that we've declared winners or close to winner in these shows, we have Suffs, Here Lies Love, Illinoise, uh, The Outsiders, and Water for Elephants. Help me make sense of this? What's winning best musical?
Um, so I've had, since the Prediction Center opened for nominations, I've had Suffs. I think of the musicals, it is, quote unquote, the most important. Do we care that it's the most important? Your mileage may vary, right? Um, I just have a gut feeling of not moving off of Suffs. I think people are very, very keen on Hell's Kitchen right now. I could definitely see Hell's Kitchen winning. and not to kind of overstate the point, but because Suffs is a big show, but it also kind of feels like, the discussion we have almost every year about, they like to award the smaller, complicated, maybe quieter, original pieces over, Hell's Kitchen is a jukebox musical. It's bigger, it's, louder. I feel like there is a kind of the dichotomy there every year. They always seem to fall back on a show like a Kimberly Akimbo, a Band's Visit, which happens to align with, my taste a lot. So that's not a complaint as to how they're choosing, but that's why I'm inclined to stay with Suffs, especially to your point. We're debating score, but if it's going to win Best Book, which I think we're both feeling confident about, if it's likely to win Best Score or at least competitive to win Best Score, those are two incredibly important awards that you need to win to win Best Musical, or need to be competitive for, I guess I should say anyway. So that's my initial gut sense, and I just don't want to overthink it and move off of my gut when, if I move off of stuff that I've had since March and I'm, and it ends up winning, I'm going to really be upset. So, how do you think it shakes out? Like how close are you to switching to like a Hell's Kitchen, for example?
This is maybe the first year I've ever been nervous about predicting Best Musical since I have been doing this. Um, because the thing I've always, if you've watched these videos, that I've always harped on is that they're going to choose the one with the original score if they have that option, right? Everyone told me that American in Paris was going to win. I said it was not going to win. And everyone said Beautiful is going to win. It was not going to win. And I knew it was never going to win because it didn't have an original score. And it just was like, sorry, it's not going to. They want to highlight their hometown composers who make these musicals happen. This year is an interesting year because I don't think any of the five shows, frankly, have developed the same kind of like overwhelming passion that we've seen with these other shows, which is what's making me nervous because I've had Suffs out front. It has all the pieces. The only place it faltered in nominations was orchestrations. It didn't get in there, but it got a costume design nomination, so it has at least one design category. Nikki got into featured actress, so it has an acting, and it got into directing, and most importantly, score and book. Score and book have been the most important to win this the past few years. But I'm not really sensing the sort of overwhelming, like, wow, it really has to be Suffs from the industry. And the other musicals have kind of taken advantage of that because Alicia Keys has been working like crazy, especially the Spring Road Conference week when there's a lot of out-of-town voters who come in. Just the producers invite them to all these shows. They get wined and dined, and there's all these wonderful parties. Like Alicia Keys was really everywhere, shaking everybody's hand, met every person, and everyone fell in love with Alicia Keys all over again. And a lot of people were like, I think she won Best Musical for Hell's Kitchen that week, which could be. Hell's Kitchen feels very, it leaves you on a high. It's very joyous. It has a lot of great moments that stick with you, but it's a jukebox musical when you come down to it. It doesn't have an original score. And I'm kind of like, well, if it's going to win Best Musical, like what else is it winning? Like, let's say Malia can take Best Actress away from Kelly O'Hara, right? Like, maybe she wins, but is that it? Like Malia and sound design? I don't know a lot of people who have Hell's Kitchen winning book of a musical, which seems like a problem for a jukebox show if you're not going to win book. Like, if it's not going to win book, it has to surprise with director and or choreography, I feel like. And I don't know if I can make that call, you know?
I also wonder, I think those are great points. I don't think it's going to win director for Michael Greif. I love Michael Greif. He had
Or Michael Greif.
an extraordinary season, and I'm glad he got nominated for one of these shows. I do just think Maria is going to win director. I also wonder, and I don't know how much we need to weigh this, but it's something we've talked about on other categories. But this is in particular, how much does Hell's Kitchen need to win Best Musical to stay open? I don't think it does.
This is the thing.
And I wonder how much they are aware of the fact that it's breaking $1 million at the box office every week, or it is now. Alicia Keys is going to sell this show on the road, whether it wins Best Musical or not. And Suffs, is a show that could really use the boost of Best Musical. I don't know how often they make this kind of financial calculation. Is it a strategic vote versus is it a passion vote? But I don't think you can discount some portion of that where Hell's Kitchen is going to be great if it doesn't win Best Musical. The box office isn't going to tank. The Outsiders is gaining, The Outsiders would be a really strong contender for me to vote for Best Musical. If I was going to a ballot, that would be one of the shows I would really strongly consider. That's gaining popularity at the box office too. It's doing really well. Does that need the kind of stamp of Best Musical to stay open? That's something maybe at the back of my mind. It's not the determining factor in what I predict, but I don't know if we should discount it.
Oh, I think it's a huge part of what these people take into account because I mean, just look at like Kimberly Akimbo or A Strange Loop. Those were original shows, but they were also ones that frankly needed the boost that comes from this category, which is again the thing that sets the Tonys apart from every other award show out there is that there is this advertising component of it. And on the road, for instance, winning Best Musical does mean a lot for people who aren't really following the Broadway scene closely. So I think Suffs is the one out of these shows that really it's doing okay at the box office, but like if it doesn't win Best Musical, like it's not really like a thing people like to talk about, but like how long is it going to run if it doesn't win this category? How long can it sustain itself? Whereas Hell's Kitchen is doing 1.5 million a week and it's going to be fine. They've turned it into a hit already. It's going to be fine. And so I think that is a major consideration of people are looking at grosses. They just are. And so they know how much everything is making every week. And I think similar to that point, the other one that people are going for in Best Musical is Illinoise, which is also a jukebox musical. It's using the songs from this album, pre-existing songs, and it's going to close. Like it already has an end date. So it could stand to do better at the box office, certainly, but there's an end date to it. It's not gonna it's already gonna end at the end of this summer, right? I think it's August it's playing through. So I don't know. And it's just interesting. People I've talked to have like after the show have been like, oh, I loved that. I loved that show. And then when I ask them, would you vote for that for Best Musical? They go, oh no, not Best Musical. Because they don't consider it like musical. They want it to have some other like special category or something. So I think those are two things going against Illinois. But it's just a weird year because I don't sense that like Suffs has the ingredients of a winner, but I don't sense that people feel overwhelmingly uh like they must vote for it the same way they felt that they must vote for A Strange Loop. They must vote for Kimberly Akimbo.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair. I don't know how much the passion is there. Illinois, I think we were maybe hotter on that pre-nominations. And again, we know that the group of nominators that is supposedly 60, but winnowed down to 40 something based on who saw the shows and who had conflicts is very different from the hundreds and hundreds of people who vote on the winners. But the fact that it didn't do so well in the nominations really spooked me from almost even considering it for Best Musical.
Yeah, the one anomaly that it has to recreate, which I think I'm writing something on this, so maybe you'll have more information on it soon, dear viewers. But it really has to hope that it is Fosse, the 1999 show, which also it had a similar trajectory of I think only winning I think it only won choreography and lighting design maybe. So it has a similar thing of like it wasn't nominated for all these categories, and it was a dance show again. So, but Fosse is like a, you know, once in the history of the Tonys phenomenon, and it was just a really weird anomaly that year. So Illinois, I think if it's not up for book, it's really weird that it didn't get up in for book. Justin Peck didn't get in for director, and it just doesn't have as high of a number of wins that it can get, you know. And I'm not sure if I can make the call based on that.
How
So
how confident are we before we sign off? How confident are we in Suffs? If we're gonna stick with, because I honestly don't feel like I'm gonna change my prediction at this point. I feel like to do so is then gonna throw
I've
everything.
had it there for so long.
Exactly. So like what percentage, if you can quantify it, what percentage confidence do you have that Suffs is gonna win?
Oh God, like maybe 50%, 49%,
That was my number
should
too.
just be under half. Like it's not. I've actually never seen a year like this.
Yeah.
Because we haven't even talked about The Outsiders much, but I could see like a sliver of a chance for that. And I don't think I've ever been covering a year where there's like legitimately 4 shows that
Yeah.
could win Best Musical. I think I would love for them to release the vote tallies. The shows, for the producer's sake, they probably don't want that released, but I would love to see like what the final tally is, because I have a feeling it's going to be very spread out,
Yeah.
which always makes it really hard to predict. Um, but I think if Suffs really is winning Best Book and Best Score, to me, that means it's winning Best Musical, unless it's a Fosse moment or a ragtime moment, when Lion King took Best Musical despite not winning Best Book or Score. Uh, I just have to think. I have to think it's gonna be Suffs for that reason.
Even if it loses best score, it's going to lose best score to a best play winner. It is not competing against Stereophonic for best musical. So even if like I won't be too worried if it wins book and it loses score. I won't be terribly like gnawing my teeth all night waiting, because it's not competing against Stereophonic for best musical.
Which would match Strange Loop for the only
Yeah.
other trophy they picked up was Michael R. Jackson for Best Book.
Yeah.
So it's dicey. It gets dicey when it's like, oh, it's gonna win, but I think it will win 3 awards tops. So if there's a slight hitch in the voting where it loses one of them, it really gets kind of terrifying for your prediction score. So, all right, well, we don't know what's happening, folks, for Best Musical. We think maybe Suffs, maybe Illinoise, maybe Hell's Kitchen. Go with your gut, because whatever wins is just probably going to win a very small number of Tony Awards this season. So stick with us. Make sure you are here at Gold Derby for Tony Eve, and see how well or how poorly David and I do on these Best Musical predictions. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Sam.